Ah, governments, the shining beacons of care and concern for their people, right? Well, not so much. It's a common misconception that the type of government you live under dictates the level of care you'll receive. Let's start with democracies, shall we? Heralded as the epitome of freedom, where every voice matters. But do they? Or are they just drowned out by the noise of lobbyist dollars and political rhetoric? And then we have monarchies. Ah, the romance of royalty. Born under a regal bloodline, one might think that the rulers would have a vested interest in their subjects. But history has shown us that the crown's care often extends only as far as the palace walls. So what's the takeaway? Well, it's that no matter the system, the story remains the same. So whether you're voting for someone or simply born under a royal bloodline, does it really make a difference? Now, let's take a look at the people's champions, the democracies and communist regimes. On the one hand, we have democracies, the land of the free, where every citizen gets a voice, or so they say. Democracies claim to be the bastion of freedom, where everyone's opinion matters and the majority rules. But let's face it, when was the last time your vote actually made a difference? When was the last time a politician genuinely cared for your needs, rather than their own ambitions, or the interests of big corporations? The ideals of democracy are indeed noble, but the reality, well, that's a different story. On the other hand, we have communist regimes, the so-called workers' paradise. They promise equality, fraternity, and a society free from exploitation. Sounds utopian, right? Yet in practice, we often see power concentrated in the hands of the few, economic stagnation and suppression of individual rights. The gap between the communist dream and the lived reality is as wide as the Grand Canyon. So, here we are, stuck between a rock and a hard place. Democracies often fail to live up to their lofty ideals, while communist regimes seem to forget their promise of equality and shared prosperity. So, whether you're casting a vote or waving a red flag, your government might not be as caring as you think. And what about those who rule with an iron fist or manipulate with an invisible hand? Yes, we're talking about dictatorships and totalitarian regimes. In a dictatorship, power is centralized in the hands of one person. The dictator's word is law, and there's no room for differing opinions. People's rights and freedoms are often suppressed to maintain the regime's grip on power. The well-being of the citizens, it often takes a back seat to the dictator's whims and desires. Now let's turn our gaze towards totalitarian regimes. In these systems, the government's control extends to nearly all aspects of public and private life. The invisible hand of the state manipulates everything from the economy to education, from media to morality. The state decides what you should know, what you should think, and sometimes even what you should feel. And the well-being of the people? Well, that's often sacrificed at the altar of the regime's survival. In both scenarios, the individual is reduced to a cog in the machine, a mere tool to uphold the regime. The iron fist crushes dissent, the invisible hand guides behavior, and the person, they're left navigating a world where their needs and desires are secondary to the whims of those in power. So, whether you're living under a dictator's rule or a totalitarian regime's control, your well-being might not be their top priority. All political systems have a small group of people who control everything and gain all benefits, while we are seen as numbers. So you might be thinking, what can we do about it? Well, the answer lies in the mirror. Each one of us has the power to change the narrative. We've got to think critically about our own government's actions. Do they align with our values? Do they truly represent our interests? The world isn't black and white, and neither is governance. Just because a government is in place doesn't mean it's irrefutable. It's not about accepting the status quo. It's about demanding better. Active citizenship isn't just about casting a vote. It's about holding those in power accountable, voicing our concerns, and making sure our voices are heard. It's about collective action, because there's strength in numbers. In the grand chess game of politics, we're not merely pawns, we're the players. We have the power to dictate the moves. Remember, a government is only as good as its citizens allow it to be. Demand better, think critically, and never stop questioning.